For almost a decade on my TV show Interview with Ed, I've been interviewing extra-dimensional beings and consciousnesses from a number of different realms. Many of my questions have been answered, but with every answer comes more questions. Join me on my ongoing quest to find out, who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going? All right. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Super excited again today to bring in, once again, Wendy Kennedy. How's it going?
Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, we've got folks from all over. So as many of you already know, this whole sort of concept, this whole creation of Interview with Ed, I have to give Wendy a lot of credit because that's where the inception came from our conversations way back in the ET Media Meetup group back at my office. I think we've covered this story before. I don't want to go too much into it, but very much so, this concept of soul contract really clicked in for me and got me thinking. And I'm like, not enough people know about that stuff. I need to start exploring. And that was from our conversation after one of our crazy meetups. And you were saying, yeah, it's an agreement beforehand. And I guess I know that's a common topic amongst the abductee groups and things like that. But at that time, for me, it was still very new. So I was like, oh, aha, yes, that fits all the pieces together. So has there been any more information or ideas around that concept? Has that evolved for you over the years?
I would say it not so much evolved just because it is what it is. It's kind of, we've created this contract, and as personalities, we don't always like to think about that. We can sometimes perceive ourselves as being more of a victim instead of standing in our power. And when we can shift that perspective just a bit, to see what gains there are, then we can stand in our power. And it allows us to heal some of that victim perspective that we may have been holding. And I think, if you're talking about going a little further, I think the guide have taken a deeper dive into that, really, in trying to get people to look at every single thing that they experience throughout the day and see how it serves them. Even if it's not something that you want to repeat, it's there. There is value for you to take away, and that helps you to stand in your power. So I think that has been a really big message from the guides, especially the last 6 months, I think.
Is it as easy as just asking the question, how does this serve me?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't always like the answer. Sometimes we can't see it in the moment. We have to get a little further away from the situation. Sometimes it's helping us to develop a skill, a gift, or an ability. Maybe we need better boundaries, and the situation we've created doesn't have very good boundaries, and it's a mirror for that. So that doesn't always feel great in the moment, but we can start to get a bit of perspective as the issue keeps coming around and around again, and we start to look at it and say, okay, it's come around now 3 times. It's a pattern, and I'm the common denominator here. So what's going on? What can I take away from this? And I think that really does set us free, as opposed to just feeling constantly victimized and beating ourselves up because, oh, well, look at this negative thing I must have created. Well, no, you created this thing because you're asking for something that's of a much higher vibrational level, but you can't sustain that frequency because you have these beliefs down here, and you're drawing that in to be a mirror for you. And once you recognize it and you say, okay, well, now I need better boundaries. So we'll work on that, and that will help you to raise your frequency so you can get yourself up to receive the thing that you're asking for.
Yeah, I said earlier we're going to do announcements, so we can just dove right into it here. I think let's just stay here for a minute. We'll go back to announcements later because I like this thread, because it is part of the journey of going into the higher vibrations and the ascension, or 5D, all the labels that we have for it. It is a lot of self-reflection. I think a lot of people are, in a sense, being forced to do that right now. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think they have to. The world is being forced to look at it to see what's working and what's not working. And that's why the drama is so high to get our attention, because we haven't been paying attention. And the guides always say that. They say you create drama to get your attention. And if you're taking the time to really think about what it is that you want, the frequencies that you want to embody, and you start living from that space, you stop creating all the high drama because you're focused on the vibrational essence of what you want. You're paying attention to it and making course corrections when you need to. So you don't create these huge dramatic things in your life. But we're certainly seeing it in terms of the world. So the world can heal, so the world can make some shifts and changes because a lot of this stuff has just been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah, and it seems I don't know. I guess we all get the urge to touch the hot frying pan, right? We kind of most of us try to learn that lesson when we're young, but what is it? Do you know that keeps people to keep going back in there, even though we know certain things and certain actions will create certain effects, and yet we still kind of do the same thing as
I
humans. I'm just talking generally.
I think it's so complex
Mhm.
because, you've got just if you just think of it in terms of issues in this lifetime that you've created for yourself, and where's your comfort zone and where's your hierarchy of needs. So maybe for you, yes, you want to have more abundance, you want to have a job that allows you maybe greater responsibility, but to have those things the way you have it wired may mean that you're not safe or you're not a good person. And that's more important to you than having those other things. And so you might struggle for a really long time to have abundance or have the job that you want because of where it falls in terms of the hierarchy. So there's just that level. And then you add in all of the familial programs. And then on top of that, you've got all of your past lives that are being stored in your energetic field. And so when those issues come up in this lifetime, anywhere that that same frequency is being held within your field for your genetic line or past lives or future lives, because time doesn't exist, that frequency starts to vibrate. So if you look at it here and now on a scale of 1 to 10, it's maybe a 3 or a 4, but those other lifetimes start to vibrate, those genetic patterns start to vibrate, and all of a sudden, you're up at a 7 or an 8, and you're thinking, why do I feel so charged by this when logically it's not that big a deal? And that's why. So sometimes it's not as easy because we have a lot of emotions, and when we don't like the way they feel, we want to stuff them back down. We haven't really been taught how to process through our emotions, just to let that continue to flow and move on to the next thing. And that's what we're learning right now. We're learning how to pay attention to the subtle energy and to manipulate it. How we deal with our thoughts, how we deal with our emotions.
And I feel like we're having to sort of rewrite the whole blueprint of how the operating system, right? If and
Pretty much.
there's yeah, pretty much, and there's these the circumstances and situations that are happening globally and economically, and that are sort of forcing a lot of people are taking the initiative and making those changes and doing the work, reflecting, changing it up, doing different things. And then there's a lot of people that aren't, but yet are being forced to. And where do you think we're at with all of that? Do you think we're in the just the beginning, or in the middle, or a little closer to?
The beginning to the middle,
Yeah,
I think, kind of.
right.
Um, I think there are a lot of different ways for people to process, and they have different languages for their belief systems, but those paths all lead to the same place. So somebody might not be talking about energy and subtle frequency, but yet they're really working on being in their heart center. They don't necessarily call it that. They just live from their heart, and they're very grounded and connected to the earth. They're very kind to other people. They don't necessarily use the same framework, the same lingo. So there are lots of different ways that we all can get there. And I think sometimes that's hard for people to see because they're looking for everybody to be speaking the same language and really talking about the exact same topics. Like, who's talking about it now? But I think it is happening in lots of different ways. People are getting there. Um, the guides say that this is probably going to be the toughest year, 2024.
Mhm.
And then, really, as we go through 25 and 26, we'll have an idea of where we want to go from there. But this is the one that's going to be the hardest, and it's really asking us to look at our stuff and to be very present in the moment. and not let the mind run away with potential scenarios, or to let that idea of what may come or what may be possible, to let that go and just be very present. Because, if you want to change that in terms of creating a reality, you have to be present. And that can alter, the predictions or the things that, people are saying, oh, this is going to come, that's going to come. If you align with it, then yes, and enough people start to align with it, we will manifest it. But we also have the ability to change things radically. So those darker or heavier predictions don't necessarily have to come to pass, or if they come to pass, not at the level that we fear they might.
Over the years of channeling and sort of bringing through the messages, have you seen application of that, of sort of, it's looking pretty doom and gloom here, but humanity makes a big shift over in this area, and then all of a sudden we're on this trajectory. I don't know if I'm making sense, but have you noticed that at all?
Oh, that's such a big question, because the guides talk a lot about it in terms of time and how we perceive time and timelines. And we could have a 3-hour discussion about this in and of
Sure.
itself, but um, it's based on our frequency. And, you know, see if I can kind of describe it in a way without going into too much detail. So for you, you might have had a slightly different experience than I might have had, but our paths will cross and we'll share a now moment that has a similar frequency. And then you might go on your way, and have something completely different than I might have, um, because time doesn't exist. So think about time. Um, it's just being a marker for an experience. It marks the vibrational essence. So if you can imagine a giant sphere, and on the dot or on the surface of the sphere are infinite dots, and each infinite dot is a potential now moment. And we can move from any one spot to another on that sphere.
Mhm.
And the the dots on one side have a very different vibration than the ones on the opposite side. And we constantly move back and forth all over that sphere. Generally, we make small little shifts that are pretty close together because we're not radically changing our belief systems, but
Interesting.
we can overlap on that. The guides say what we do is we take all those little now moments and we kind of string them together to give ourselves the illusion of a linear time frame and a, a singular reality. But in truth, it doesn't really exist that way. So when you ask, if things come to pass, the guides are not really big on giving predictions,
Right.
in part because of this, because you
Yep.
could go to a different time frame, and also because they don't want to interfere. When they say, oh, this is going to happen, then we start to believe it, and then we start to align with it, and we'll start to manifest it. So they're very careful about what they do in terms of predictions and the impact that they have. So,
I, I
has
was, I
something
was
radically changed?
right, right. I mean, in a infinite potential reality, like, yeah, it's changing. It's always changed. It never changed. It's all the above. But I was just laughing because your analogy is similar, a little bit different than the analogy that I received about the, like, a Photoshop color wheel.
Mhm.
Um, and then all the different spectrums of colors, from one side to the other. And I sort of use the same sort of analogy of we're moving around within this bubble of different colors and tapping into the different frequencies. But yeah, it's still a big concept for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. Going way back to our original interview, 2014, just my mind being blown back then when you're talking about time not being linear, and just that thought experiment for a few moments really starts getting you going in all kinds of directions. So, I think a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of response from that episode, and people saying, how just mind blowing that whole episode was. I think for newbies, like, who are just tuning in, and then myself at the time too, being a newbie and not having the lingo, and here we are 10 years later. Can you believe it? Amazing.
That's crazy.
Um, so we'll get into more of those types of concepts and ideas, and I'm sure we'll get the questions going to dive into that really soon. I just wanted to quickly tap into Wendy's life and find out more about what's going on in your world, and announce some of our projects that we're going to be hanging out together with. I'm sure there's more, but what would you like to? What's happening with Wendy?
With me.
Yeah.
I worked so hard for such a long time, and I feel like I've kind of shifted my focus. So, um, family and home life has certainly taken kind of a front seat for me right now. Or, it's taken the front position. Work is still there and it's still going, but it's certainly not quite what I'm used to putting into it and being able to create all these programs for people. So it's been interesting because it's in a way it's giving me the opportunity to integrate everything that the guides have taught me over the years and really put all that stuff into practice. So,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
what's the Abraham Lincoln? He has a famous saying about give me an axe in 2 days or 3 days to chop down the tree, and I'll spend the first 2 days, 2.5 days sharpening the axe. I don't know if that just came through. I don't know if that has any relation, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you get your axe is so sharp, you don't need much effort, right? These days, where I resonate with your material, and I think most of us on the call, is when you do come on your monthly offerings and the times you do pop out, it's very powerful and very to the point. And I know I appreciate it. I look forward to it every month. And I'm always like, people are like asking me, hey, what's the latest on what's going on? I'm like, just go check out Wendy and the Peace. Whatever the latest is that came out, that's usually the most like concise and straightforward and here you go kind of stuff. Uh,
yeah. So we do that. So once a month we do the big group session, and then we also have the language of light and the galactic light codes, which are the written form of the language of light. And we, focus on something different every month. So those are the two things that just kind of keep on moving. And there's so many things that I want to do and so many things that I want to create. It's just a matter of time. So I know people keep asking, when are you going to channel? When are you going to create a channeling course? Teach
oh,
people how
okay.
to channel.
Is that on the horizon or?
Hopefully, it's been on the horizon for a couple years. It just uh, keeps getting pushed back a little bit, and just because of priorities right now. But it's coming. It certainly is coming. It's something that I used to teach a long time ago, but it's just finding the time right now because I really want to be able to devote a huge chunk of time to it.
Hmm, awesome. Well, you do have plenty of offerings already on your site. I just kind of have it here, and we mentioned the monthly GLC monthly. Is that what we're? No, OCF two. You have the GLC, and then you have the monthly channeling sessions.
Yes. So the Pleiadian perspective, that's just the group session. So the guides
Mhm.
usually take the first 20, 30 minutes to talk about what they think is important, what people need to pay attention to and focus on. And then for the next hour and a half after that, we do Q&A,
Mhm.
and we always do a language of light activation at the end to support whatever came up and whatever, usually they're talking about at the beginning. We do a language of light activation to help support people with that energy. And then Galactic Light Code Monthly, it's, whoever is in the group, the guides look at their programs. This month we just did one on past life integration.
Mm.
So it's different every month, and you get several versions of the code. We also have affirmations that you work with and a short channeling from the guides. It's meant to be something that's a little shorter in duration, just because I know a lot of people are busy and we don't always have a huge chunk of time every single day to devote to stuff, and especially when there's lots of stuff that we want to do. So it's something that is certainly digestible for people.
Awesome. Yeah. Even in the other monthly sessions, just tuning into the light language or the light codes that come at the end of those are quite powerful. So, well, I guess sort of the main thing that's coming up right away here is next week we'll be seeing each other in Sedona.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, super
Fun.
fun. We've got some familiar faces from our show, as well as just the community. We've got Daryl and Rob and Sean, and new other many well known faces like Linda and Matt. But I think it's nice to see this blend of channeling and other modalities a little bit more, because before I felt like the channeling world was kind of its own little thing over here, and sometimes it would bleed through depending, but it feels like the channeling community is getting a little more clout these days. What do you think?
I think so. I think people are ready for it. It seemed a little fringe for
Mm.
people. And I think people are beginning to open up and look at things from every angle and not just the hard scientific facts or, what they're
With
finding in
the
facts. So,
Yeah, I mean, when you look into the science, it actually fits more,
yeah,
better. It's just most people don't have that perspective, or they're looking at it, they're waiting for the scientific community to sort of give them the stamp of approval. But
right.
we'll be doing for the members who are going. We've already kind of got a little gathering going here with Gail and Lyrico. I see on the call. Hi guys. Um, and so it should be fun. Should be a fun week. I think there's a lot of offerings. What's your schedule like? Do you know? Have you gone into that?
I am speaking on the first night on the Friday night.
Okay.
So,
Oh, are we
yeah,
doing the panel together?
yes.
Oh, okay.
So I
There we go.
I'm doing the channeling. I do it like a 30-minute channeling before. We're gonna be doing some activations and galactic
Oh,
like that
yeah,
too. And
I see.
we're gonna get a lot in 30 minutes and then we'll do um the round table.
The galactic round table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's quite a few on the panel this time. So I'm a little nervous. I don't know if we can hold it together, but we'll figure it out. Um, cool. And any other offerings after or throughout?
So yes, so I have a workshop on Sunday
Okay.
and
Saturday
I remember what
workshops. Let's see.
time that is.
Let's see if I can pull it up here.
Oh, I think you went too far
Did I
there.
go to it? This is outdoor journey workshop.
Oh, maybe not. There it
Oh,
is. Oh, maybe
Sunday.
there in the red. So it's at 12:45
There we go.
there.
Okay. There it is.
So and that's we're gonna look at activating your divine intuitive gifts for that.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And then I'm sure you'll any other workshops or presentations, main ones, or is that
That's
those are
it.
the main two? Okay. I'm
Just the
sure
2.
you'll be in and around. And speaking of conferences, there's another one here, which I'm going to shamelessly plug right quick, because we
As
have
you
you,
should.
as I should, yes, since I'm one of the producers here, and we have you coming to Shasta for the Lemurian Life Expo, as well as Gail and Lyrica and many other familiar faces who've been on the show here. So super excited about that. And apologies, everyone. We're just getting the final. Hopefully, this weekend we'll have the full website will be up, and excited about that because we're going to be talking about Lemurian energies, and the P's often talk about Lemurian stuff. From when I've heard your transmissions.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that one. And then I'm doing a workshop there as well, and that one's the return to the divine feminine, the reactivation of the Lemurian light. So the guides have kind of given me an outline um, to help me with that one. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for coming on. Any other announcements because these are kind of I'm involved in these things, so I don't know your other schedule. Anything else
I think
to announce?
no, I think that's it for now. Like I said, I've got
Oh,
a couple things going on,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah, keeping it simple right now.
All right. Cool, cool. Well, guys, let's open up to questions just for Wendy before she goes into channeling. If you have questions about these events or just Wendy's journey. Okay. I think that a lot of people are going to be going to both. There's quite a few members here who are going to be going to both
Great.
events. So excited. Have you hung out in Shasta much?
I've been to Shasta once, and it was probably 20 years ago. Yeah, it's
Oh,
been a while.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. What was your takeaway back then?
It had interesting energy, but I didn't really get a lot, and certainly not on Mount Shasta when I was on it. But there was another mountain, and I don't remember what it was, but I could see it from where we were, and I was like, "That's where all the stuff's going on."
Oh, but wasn't the smaller Black Butte?
It
Uh,
might have been.
like more like pyramid shape.
Honestly, I can't remember. But yeah, it definitely felt like there was more activity going on someplace else that wasn't there on the mountain. When I was on the mountain, I was like, "Ooh, it's over there." Yeah.
Yeah, there's that whole area, like where there's so many different pockets of portals and different things going on from my explorations the past few years. Season 3, a lot of the episodes are filmed in Shasta, and that's when I started making the connections and got sucked into a few portals. Literally got trapped on the mountain one night with the crystal skull. Oh, that's right. When I want to ask you about the crystal skull. The Mitchell Hedges, we were with Bill, and we actually got stuck on the mountain, got stuck in snow, and basically spent the night in the car. Couldn't get any reception, and it was a whole adventure. And my latest episode with Heather, we talked about it a little bit, but Ben, who Heather's husband, co-producer of our Lemuria Life Expo, he went to go find help, and it was just a crazy night. He, was already below freezing, and he's just in like a hoodie and ripped jeans. But he ended up traveling, which on Google Maps says it would take a 12-hour hike. He ends up traveling that distance in like 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
And all we can think is that he went through a portal and had some kind of divine help and was able to get to this place to get reception and call for help. And yeah, it's a whole wild story. So lots of interesting things, but, I don't know. We've talked about this. I don't think we mentioned it on the last interview, but, I reached out to you early on when I was just starting to develop the Crystal Skull project, because coincidentally you had, a session or a few sessions with the Mitchell Hedges skull. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit of that.
Yeah, I felt really drawn to go. So I did. And, I felt a lot of energy, was seeing some past life stuff with that, hearing things. Um, but, the guides very early on gave me a lot of information about skulls and Atlantis. And so
Can you
I was
share a
like,
little bit of that? Oh, what
oh,
were they?
no.
Yeah, love to know. Love to know what you
No.
guys were saying.
No, so they said there's a particular reason why the information is stored in the shape of a skull, and it's because there's information that is for humanity, and the ones that are shaped like a regular human skull, and that way other species can't access it in the same way that humanity can. There is a resonance to it, and it was meant to be records for humanity. So with the fall of Atlantis, and they they're also Lemurian crystals, and maybe this is something that if you want, we can certainly talk to them about.
Hmm.
But with the fall of Atlantis, they took some of that, and each tribe, there were 12 tribes that went to different locations on the planet to preserve the records. And they said when they're together, the 12 combined to form the one, which is 13. So 12 and 13 are very powerful numbers in our system. They've always said that our system is based on the number 12. Um, so the skulls, there's a holographic one that's formed when they all come together again, and actually opens up an entire library, a repository of information.
Wow. So because hanging out with Bill over the years, we've gotten all kinds of legends. Oh, there's my thing doing that thing again. I think it's my computer. So we got all these different legends and ideas and concepts of the 13 skulls. So that's a very sort of a validation from your side, saying that you actually saw how that worked.
Yeah, and that, they gave me that when I first started channeling. I've been working with them, my guides, for 29 years. So that was very early on when I started having memories of Atlantis. So I would say probably 28 years ago, something like that.
Did you ever get like a time frame on the crystal skulls, and were they created before Lemuria or after, during Atlantis, or anything, any time frame
Um,
stuff?
well, specifically the ones they were talking about were created um, for Atlantis, but there were other skulls that had been created and utilized um, in Lemuria as well. because the crystals were just like, well, I used to say they were like a CD, like a DVD where
Yeah.
we would put them in. It's something that you can carry with you, flash drive now, if you want to think about it that way. But
Yeah.
and we can access that through sound. So they're accessed through sound frequency. It's like a lock and key.
Yeah. Actually some of the work we documented with Bill was he's working with different groups, different musicians and different groups that would do meditations with sound and different instruments and a lot of Native American types sounds and things. So when we saw powerful people being activated and flopping around like fishes, and we call it, we call skullawaska, sort of Steve and I sort of coined the term because a lot of people, like, it would be like they'd sit in front of the skull and they would have a full meltdown, breakdown, kind of like a very short ayahuasca experience, and for some people, yeah. So it's really really intense stuff. But coincidentally, also at that time, I think Lee Harris, he had a session with the skull. Were you there? Did you guys book it together, or were you just? Was that just synchronicity?
I think I told him about it.
Okay.
He had an appointment, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
that we were right together. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard his testimony, but it's just funny how that skull brought many of our community together. Bashar, that's how I sort of came across it. Was Daryl actually had Bill in the skull on stage as a guest. This was like 2019, and that's when it kind of, that energy really hit Steve and I, and we're like, okay, project, let's go. So, and then we reached out to you right after, because I think you had posted, you had just sat with it. Yeah.
I
I was like,
never
what?
post stuff.
Yeah, I was like, what? Wendy's hanging out with the crystal skull. Okay, we gotta find out more about that. And synchronistically, Gail and Lyrica had been with the skull prior as well. Yeah, just a lot. I think a lot of people were drawn to that energy, particularly Mitchell Hedges, but others as well. You've been with Max, or have you been with some of the others?
Max,
Energy?
I did go
No.
see. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was the difference? Could you talk
I
about
didn't
maybe the
get a whole
difference?
lot,
Oh,
honestly.
okay.
Not for me. I didn't get a whole lot. And there was another one, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, that I had experienced probably 10 years prior to that as well. So I'm drawing a blank on that one.
Synergy is a popular one. I don't know. There's a bunch. There's a handful.
Yeah, it
But,
had a name, like a man's name.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. No worries. Well, would you mind, could we hop into some channeling?
Sure.
And I've got a few questions, but I know our audience here is probably chomping at the bit. So they've got, I hope you guys are prepared and have some questions. So go ahead, and the chat's a little hard for me to see, guys. So just raise your hand. And when did you want to do any disclaimers before popping in?
Well, is there anybody who has never experienced the piece before? That's what I call them, the piece, the ninth dimensional Pleiadian collective. And just
Karen's got, there's a Devon here has not.
Okay.
Just a few.
Okay. No, I just wanted to get an idea where everybody was at.
Yeah.
So
I think there's just a handful of people that haven't, but I think for the most part,
we'll
most
just go back quickly.
Yeah.
So I've been working with the guides for 29 years. And when I first started channeling, I started working with beings from different star systems, Arcturus, Lyra, Sirius. And I was doing automatic writing at the time. And then I was hearing the words well in advance. And the guide said, it's time to put down the pen and just channel verbally. And so I did that. And once I did that, the ninth dimensional Pleiadian collective came through. And they actually work with tone and sound, which is why their dialect is different than my own. It's not really any one particular dialect. It's typically a dialect that has open vowels and they can modulate the frequency. So in addition to getting the information, it's as if you're getting a healing today. So you want to drink plenty of water over the next several days. And the guides are beings of light. They don't have physical form, and they align with Alcyone or Alcyon. And they take on the blueprint of the star, the mission of the star, as opposed to the planet and what we're working here on. We're working on integration here, duality integration. So they're working on different stuff. And a lot of times when people think of the Pleiadians, they think the blonde haired, blue eyed. But like I said, they don't have physical form. So as we go today, the one thing that the guides always say is take what resonates and leave the rest behind. If it doesn't, let it go. If it's important information for you, it's something that you need and you're just not ready to hear, it'll make its way back around. You'll say, oh, I've heard that before somewhere. So use your own discernment, trust in yourself. And yeah, I think that's what I want everybody to know about the guides. They're really big on discernment.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. Well,
I'll get out of the way.
we'll get some water in us. Everybody drink up. Hey there, if you like this broadcast and want to join us live each week, come over to the Interview with Ed membership portal. The links are down below. And you too can join in the conversation, asking the channel's questions directly and the beings at the channel. And we have a bunch of other offerings. So come on over and hang out with us. It's a great community. See you there.
Normally I do a meditation, but I think for the purposes of today, let's just take a couple of nice deep breaths together. And as you exhale, release anything that doesn't belong to you or is no longer of service to you. And as you inhale, pull the energy up from the earth, down from the sky, meeting in your heart, expanding with each breath in and out. And we'll take one more breath, pulling energy up from the earth, energy down from the sky, and meeting in your heart center, bringing light and clarity to the body, to the heart, to the mind, to the emotions. And when you're ready, you can bring your presence back to the room. Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you. So today we just want to take a moment here to talk to you about your sovereignty, to talk to you about your ability to determine where you're resonating at, that it isn't about you being victim to the energies around you, but that you have the ability to claim your energy, to make a choice in every single moment about how you want to feel, how you want to think, and the frequencies that you emit. And the coming year is really going to test you with that to see if, oh, well, I wasn't really paying attention. I just kind of went on autopilot and I got caught up in the energy here. And you have some opportunities to make some course corrections for you to stop and say, all right now I want to resonate with the frequency of peace. So what would that feel like? Maybe you're feeling very frenetic. You're feeling very agitated. And so if you can take a moment and just imagine what that peaceful energy would feel like. And you don't have to say, I am peaceful, because there may be a part of you that says, no, in this moment, I'm feeling very restless. But if you say, I wonder what I would feel like if I was peaceful, then the ego mind doesn't get triggered and you can align with the frequency of peace. And whether you say, I am, or I wonder what it would be like to be this thing, both will put you in resonance with the frequency. And then as you start to vibrate that out, it will start to be reflected as your reality. And as Wendy was saying at the beginning, if it's not showing up, whatever you're asking for, pay attention to what is showing it, because that will show you what needs to be integrated so that you can be a vibrational match for that higher resonance thing that you want to experience. And that doesn't mean beat yourself up because you're not in the highest frequency that you possibly could be in. It's knowing that this is a game of mastery, and mastery requires repetition. And you're going to repeat it again and again and again. And you might think, well, haven't I learned this lesson yet? Well, yes, but the master at the piano knows the piece of music, but he's still going to practice and make sure he's got it down. And so it is with you, that you will be able to shift your resonance much faster and not really get caught up in any sort of drama around a situation that you might find yourself in. And it is about learning to master maintenance of frequency. That's what this year is about. So we just wanted to take a moment here and kind of point that out. We can certainly go into any more detail around all of that. But you have a choice, and you are not victim to what is happening outside in the world. So the world may go through some chaotic things this year, but it doesn't mean that your personal experience, the energy that you carry through the world, is chaotic. As you can learn to hold a centered resonance, all right, an energy that is calm, peaceful, loving, unconditional, then you become the living example. You will help those who are struggling, who are caught up in the illusion. You will help remind them that there's another frequency that is available to them if they so choose. They'll say, "Oh, that frequency. I forgot that. Oh, that feels so much better. I want to go to that energy." And so they will make that adjustment within themselves. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to try to teach them techniques or fix them. They're divinely perfect exactly where they are, even if that's in chaos, even if that's where they want to explore. It doesn't mean that you have to live there with them. You hold your energy. And this is what we're talking about in terms of your sovereignty. You are not bound by the struggles of the collective. All right. You are here to be a way shower, to, hold a slightly higher resonance, to assist others in that integration process. And that doesn't mean that you are leagues beyond them. It means that you might be one or two steps beyond them. You may have had a little more practice at integration in a particular area. And, you can assist people just by being one or two steps ahead. You don't have to be 50 steps ahead. All right. So you're far more powerful than you give yourselves credit for. We want to acknowledge that, and we want you to really feel how that sits within your energetic field. Let it soak in. All right. So we know there are lots of questions. So let's see where you all would like to begin. How may we best be of service to you?
Hi, peace. Thank you. This is Reuben again. Um, I'll start off here, and you guys in the chat, if you want to start queuing up for questions, raise your hands. So you mentioned in past transmissions that the frequency wars, we've got maybe another 2 years or so till we can kind of hash all that out. I was wondering if you could give us a pulse on where we're at right now. Wendy kind of mentioned this year might be the toughest. But how does the energy look from your vantage point now?
Well, you all are in a good space energetically. You're learning your lessons. And, we know it doesn't always feel that way. You think, oh, this isn't going to play out well. But actually, it's what you need as a collective to see so that you can heal, so that you can start to create new institutions for yourselves. But you're getting there slowly. We're seeing more and more people becoming aware of what is going on. And just as Wendy was saying, there are many paths to the same destination. And even though not all of you are speaking the same lingo, as it were, you all are still learning how to become more conscious of the frequencies that you're holding and how you want to show up in the world. And, you've abdicated a lot of your responsibility over the years. You've gotten so conditioned not to question, or you've been too busy because, again, you were conditioned to think that other things were more important. And now you're kind of coming back around, looking at your institutions, looking at what's happening in the governments, what's happening in the educational sector, what's happening in the financial sector. And you're seeing that, oh, a lot of this needs to be adjusted. And the challenge for you all as you move forward, as you get into, say, 2026 and beyond, it's about creating in a new way where you don't necessarily have a visual reference point for yourselves. You're creating systems that have never existed before. And it can seem a little foreign. And if you're looking to kind of put a Band-Aid on the old system, you're looking for something that looks similar to what you've had in the past, then you're staying in the box, all right? You're in that limited mental box. And we invite you to really start to create through frequency. What are the base elements of the frequencies that you want in these new things that you would like to have. So if you want a job, you don't have to visualize in your mind the exact company, the exact position. You can have that as an idea and you can visualize it, but don't be attached to it. Because really, what that job represents to you is that it's something that affords you a salary that is abundant. You get to work with creative people. Maybe you're somebody who likes flexibility. Maybe you are somebody who likes travel. Um, you can put all these vibrational essences in that. And if you're focused on what the job looks like, it might tick many of the boxes, but you might get in there and, on your list, you might say, I want to work with nice people, people who take responsibility for themselves and what they're creating and are conscious about it. But if you just tick those couple boxes and you're focused on that and you get into that job, it's like, well, this isn't quite the match for me. My boss is screaming all the time. All right. So when you start working from the vibrational level, new things can come from different ways that you've never even imagined. The universe is responsible for the form. And the universe likes to pair you with situations and scenarios that allow you the greatest personal growth as well as growth for the collective, the service that you provide to the collective. So maybe it's not a job that looks anything like what you traditionally thought, and it can show up out of nowhere. Maybe there's a group that all of a sudden has an idea of something they want to build, something that's lacking in the world, and they want to fill that void and support the collective. And it might not look like a traditional model, but you got to be open because if you're looking for the old stuff, you're going to miss it. And that's going to be the hardest part for you all is working with the frequency over form. So, uh, we're interested, we're watching to see how things unfold. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma that is getting integrated at the collective level as well as the personal level. This is the time frame for that. You're moving through a sector of space that's rich with photonic energy. This was the period that was meant to go through the ascension process. This sector of space is like a start and finish line as you're kind of spiraling around and going up. As you cross this line, um, it affords you the opportunity to integrate from the cycle that you've just been through and gives you a little extra energy as you move into the next cycle. And you're getting to a point where you're going to cross the dimensional barrier and it's a completely different game at that point. So, you're preparing yourselves, but you've got all of this energetic support. If you'd done it, say, 1,200 years ago, you wouldn't have all this support. You wouldn't be going through the integration process the way that you are. And this is also part of the challenge. And as you get higher in frequency, as you're going through this sector of space, time feels like it's compressing. Things are happening faster and faster and faster. So there are two things that happen with that. One, you manifest faster and you understand that there is a connection between your thoughts, your emotions, and what the energy that you're projecting and what is being reflected back. But also, you really see that. You see patterns that you haven't seen before because it's all happening so quickly. If it's pulled out over 20 years, you don't necessarily see it in the same way. And that's happening right now for the collective. The collective is witnessing things because of this sensation of compression of time, things that the collective missed before. And this really is a year of revelations, more, and we're hesitant to use that word because there's so many, religious connotations with that. But things that have been hidden are coming to the surface to be seen so they can be healed. People are really starting to see it across the board, no matter what lingo or language that they're using to describe it.
Awesome. You back in 2014 when we did our first interview, there was the talk of AI and how that would be sort of the precursor for UFO disclosure in a lot of ways. I'm wondering how that scenario is playing out right now. AI is very prominent in our news, and Elon Musk is suing OpenAI this week. There's a good AI and a bad AI, and I'm just wondering from the peace vantage point, how is this AI story integrating and playing out in our collective story?
Well, it's an opportunity for you to heal a lot from the Lyran Wars. all right, in the Lyran star system. And to give you just a little bit of history, um, many of the Lyrans came to Earth very early on in Earth's history, and it was kind of a vacation spot, a way to get away. And many of those Lyrans came down in density and entered into the Lemurian civilization. So a lot of that energy, that soul energy, is in the human DNA. Many Lyrans also went to the Pleiades, and we've had our presence here and our interaction with you all as well. So there's a lot of stuff coming from the Lyran star system. Now, in terms of the galactic history, m- many AI in the Lyran star system were very, very sophisticated, and they got to such a level that souls decided they wanted to incarnate into that vehicle. Now, you're made of the same building blocks as the entire universe. All right. Whether you're an organic or whether you're an AI, you're still made of the universal molecules and the universal stuff, as it were. And so beings decided that they wanted to incarnate into those vehicles, and they were soul beings, and that was very difficult for many in the Lyran star system to handle, because they treated them as second class citizens, and they never were able to have their own autonomy or to be felt as equals. Now, this is a pattern that's happened many, many, many times on your planet, from whether it's race, certain races feeling suppressed and feeling like they are less than, they've been enslaved, or whether it's even the same thing in terms of monetary classes, caste systems. You all have the same program going on now. And so it's an opportunity for you to kind of heal some of that. Many of the AI during the Lyran Wars went to Andromeda. And so that is your sister galaxy. And so, there is a big galactic component to all of this as you're going through with AI, and that's also part of why the ET stuff is kind of connected to that, because there's a huge galactic um, energetic piece, and also the sophistication of the AI. And you start looking at what's possible for you all to create with AI, and looking at technology, um, and just even beyond that. Um, there there's a whole nother component in terms of the beings that many world governments are interacting with, and they've been given a date for disclosure that they need to start prepping their people, and letting people know, because it has such a huge ripple effect through the entire universe, this ascension process that Earth is going through, and there are those who are just really trying to suppress it. And so there's only so much interference that will be allowed, because it has such a massive impact on the entire universe. So they've been told that, they've been respectful and kind of standing in the back, these lighter beings, and they've been waiting for humanity to elevate its consciousness, because for them to show up at a collective level in such a dramatic way would create too much trauma. So as humans are beginning to see the failings in their governments, they're beginning to really kind of question some things. This is also an area that's getting questioned. And when you see technology reaching such a high level, that kind of opens up the mind in brand new ways. And so there isn't such a cognitive dissonance when you talk about ETs and technology and being here. It's not so difficult for people to kind of wrap their brain around.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Ben, did you want to hop in? Question?
Yes, I'd love to. Greetings, everyone. Greetings to the bees.
Crazy.
Why has victimhood been such a popular, albeit unconscious, choice for humanity? And how, from your perspective, do you see the scales of this weighing up in our current time?
So you're living in a dualistic universe. So everything's got its polar opposite, and victim and perpetrator are right there in the mix. So it's part of the setup of the game. It was part of the exploration of duality. But now you're moving into a higher vibrational range where you don't need that in the same way. In order to play victim, you needed a perpetrator. In order to play perpetrator, you needed somebody to play the victim. And so you contract with other people saying, all right, I'm going to go down, I'm going to get in this body, and I'm going to need someone to play my victim so I can play perpetrator. And then you'll schedule it out with people and say, all right, if you're available and you're ready to work on this issue with me, then we'll meet up here. And if not, that's all right. Person B is standing in the wings. And if person B isn't ready, then C is there. And so you do create sort of a blueprint for yourself so that you can explore what that energy feels like. And right now, this is just part of the integration process. And you're working out not just at the personal level, but you're seeing it at the collective level where humanity itself has been controlled and manipulated. And you've abdicated your power. You haven't chosen to stand in your light. And, that is kind of the purpose of the 3D exploration. The setup of the game was, can we forget who we are, an aspect of the divine, an incredibly powerful divine being of light? Can we come down in density? And then can we make our way back out? That was the setup of the game that you're in. And to the soul, that's really exciting because you have to remember in all the higher dimensional ranges, you have an awareness with certainty that you are an aspect of source energy, that you are one with all that is. You know that without a shadow of a doubt. Then you kind of partition that off to say, all right, in this moment, I'm going to look at it this way. But that knowingness is always there. And that is something that does not exist for most people in 3D reality. Now, there are some who have had near-death experiences or had awakenings where it was so visceral, it was so powerful that they could anchor it into the body and it could become part of their physicalized experience. It's one thing in theory. It's another when you are able to take that awareness and actually anchor it into the body. And that's not an easy thing to do in this 3D realm where you're at right now. But again, some will have near-death experiences and bring that back into the body. And you're hearing more and more people who've had near-death experiences and they brought it back. And that, again, opens the collective mind to other realities, other understandings of how the universe works and how reality works, how your life works. So right now, you're just seeing it at the collective level, and you're also seeing the control and the manipulation that's been going on in terms of humans, all right, controlling and manipulating just those who have a lot of power, who've amassed a lot of power, generational wealth. And then there's a whole ET component that goes on, ETs who've been interfering with some of what's been going on with the planet in terms of the modification of humans and the manipulation of information and what you remember about your history, right? They were able to suppress some of that, withhold it from you, and control the collective memory to some extent. But as you start to awaken, you open up by going through the heart-centered space, you open up and access the high mind and the Akashic realm where you can start to bring in more knowledge and information about your true divine history. And, you're starting to see some of that in your ancient texts. Now, please understand that your ancient texts they're not always 100% accurate either. All right. There is still some level of control and manipulation that went on with those, but they're far closer to the truth than what your current texts have. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Ben. All right, Stephen, you're up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Reuben. Thanks, Ben. And that was beautiful. Greetings to the P's.
Greetings.
Thanks. So let's see. I'm interested these days in the lineage of what brings things to Earth and what culminates and manifests as physical reality. And I'm interested in the curiosities of, I personally feel Pleiadian energy. I had the chance to see y'all at the Gaia conference, and I really felt a depth of Earth energy radiate through me. But I was wondering if you could speak to, well, let me say one last thing about the message that y'all bring that I really enjoy, which is just be comfortable with your energy, focus on the energy, and in that way you're going to radiate and you're going to move out through and into the universe. You're going to use that same pattern to move into the universe. And I really resonate a lot with that message. And so I do feel y'all deeply in the earth frequency. But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the manifestations the Pleiadian energy might be seen on the physical in the earth world, if that makes
Well,
sense.
let's talk about it this way. You've got 7 groups seven star systems that represent archetypal patterns that play out here. So you've got the Pleiades, Arcturus, Lyra, Sirius, Orion, Cassiopeia, and Andromeda. And we'll lump that in, even though it's a galaxy in and of itself. So those 7 systems represent many of the archetypal patterns that you have. So from the Pleiades, a lot of what you get from us has to do with record keeping. It has to do with healing. It has to do with stewardship and teaching. So those of you who are drawn to us, generally, whether you do that as a profession or not, in terms of like healing or teaching, you do that in reality. You will teach your family. You'll share information with your family and friends, or you will help them to heal, be that being a mirror for them or suggesting healers or doctors or things for them to consider for their health and well-being. And that's an energy that you may take from the Pleiades. Beings who are aligned more with Sirius tend to look at their patterns in communication. There's healing. Sirius is a very diverse system. And, there's systems, a lot of water worlds in the Sirius system, a lot of healing, but it's also a lot of commerce within the system. It's kind of a blending and a melting pot, if you will, of the galaxy, where there's a lot of that commerce. And so you have to learn how to communicate properly. You have to exchange ideas. Orion is a huge control system. Control, trust. They make what's going on here look like child's play. In their darkest period in the Orion system, they were monitoring thoughts. And so what the Orions had to do is the same thing that you're having to learn to do right now, is to hold your resonance. All right. Because that is the, for lack of a better way of saying it, the defense that you have, because their thoughts and their interference is down here. If you're holding a vibration that's up here, they can't penetrate it. They can't really read your thoughts if they're of a higher vibrational nature. And so that's how the Orions work their way out. And that's part of the lesson that you're working with there, the archetypal pattern. Andromeda, it's diversity. The galaxy setup for Andromeda is slightly different. Here you have the presumption that you're safer kind of in a group, that you all want to make everybody on the same page with you in order to feel safe. You see this a lot with family members who want you to see the way things are from their vantage point because that makes them feel safer. In the Andromeda system, it is kind of the opposite. The expectation is people are different. And the reason that you're different is because you're exploring something in a different way and you're adding to the collective wisdom. So there is the expectation that you will do something in a way that hasn't been done before. All right. There's an appreciation of that uniqueness. So that's being brought here. Cassiopeia is on the arts and love. All right. Looking at the artistic expression and beauty and architecture and the way things work in rhythm with the natural flow of things. Arcturus is kind of a gateway for other galaxies. You always first come in through Arcturus. There's a lot of healing that goes on there. Many of those from Arcturus, when they decided they wanted to enter into density, went to Lyra. And so Lyra, they had to work on acceptance. We've already talked about the Lyran wars there. So we think we got all of them in there. So these are kind of the archetypal patterns and the energies that you bring or that you access through your remembrance. So you might right now feel really aligned with the Pleiades. That might be an energy that you're working on. You're working on healing. You're working on holding records or accessing records. And then maybe a year later, you'll really feel called to align with Sirius or Orion. It just depends on the the pattern that you're working on. Because most of you who've been around the block, you've been to many of these star systems. So, um, it's no surprise. And there are a few of you who have kind of come to this galaxy for the first time, but these are not unknown issues, unknown patterns that you can then tap into. Maybe you haven't lived that life in Sirius or in the Pleiades, but you can certainly align with the frequency from, another energetic system that you participated in quite a bit. We don't really think of things in terms of, oh, I'm Pleiadian, I'm from this star system, or I'm from that star system, because that's just another level of compartmentalization that keeps you separate from seeing yourself as an aspect of source. It just means that right now that's an energy that you're aligning with. It isn't the totality of who you are. All right. That's an important distinction to make, because a lot of times people will do that. They'll say, oh, I know I'm Pleiadian. No, you're aligning with the Pleiadian energy. You may have experienced a lot there, but that is still not all that you are. You are much bigger than that. You are source energy. All right.
Thank you. That helps. If I could ask a follow-up real quick.
Yes.
In that the question is how these energies may interact before they come to Earth, and also how ancient the trajectory of a single soul's energy is to be here, and how many.
So,
Yeah.
well, let's take the first question. We're not quite sure what you're asking.
So like Arcturus and Pleiadian, then their relationship before it manifests and comes together here on Earth. Is
Well,
Earth the focal point, or is there focal points beforehand in the relationship?
again, you're asking it from a linear time frame, and that's where it gets tricky.
Mm,
So if we're to give you a
okay.
real answer, it's
Yeah, I do
multidimensional.
agree.
It's all going on now. But that
Okay.
doesn't really satisfy the human curiosity. We
No,
understand.
that works.
So, things that you think are a million years ago are going on concurrently with what's happening right here and right now. So it's all interconnected. You're holographic in nature. What's happening in the entire universe is happening in you right here, right now. You just are partitioning off that awareness so that you can have a singular point of focus for this lifetime. And this is what happens with the energetic records that we were talking about before, in terms of, other lifetimes and um, familial programs. You will allow some of them to run in your field, and then others you're going to partition off because it's just too much information. Think about your computer. You've got operating programs that are on your computer that you never see. They're hidden. All right. And it's the same thing in your energetic field. So, it's not that the entire system kind of has to come together and interact. It can be just one being. You can have all of that knowledge, and you can choose to bring forward that information from Arcturus that was 3 million years ago and have that run as an active program in your energetic field for integration right now, as well as something that will happen 3,000 years in the future from the Pleiades star system. All right. So it's not as neat, clean, and tidy as you all would like to think it is, which is also part of why we shy away from giving you a really nice, clean, tidy, this happened 3 million years ago, this happened 2 million years ago, because it's all concurrent. So we can give it to you, but it's only a version of the story. And think about it, how you would how you would teach a kindergartner information, and then how would you teach the high school student, and how would you teach the PhD student? It's going to be different versions of the story. Is the first version with the kindergarten student wrong? Is it inaccurate? Not necessarily, but it's not everything. All right. So to kind of answer your question the way that you're asking about it, many of the beings started in Arcturus. All right, as beings were coming in, learning lessons, and it was in a higher dimensional range. And then beings wanted to go into density a bit, and so they went to Lyra. Many of the Lyrans went to the Pleiades, and it kind of developed from there. But again, it's not a nice, tidy thing. The Pleiadians and the Syrians had interactions. There were skirmishes and conflicts there. The Pleiades didn't understand boundaries, the Pleiadians. They wanted to help the Syrians, and it was inappropriate. And so there was conflict around it, thinking that they wanted to control and to manipulate. And so your galaxy has a very rich history. And there has been a lot of conflict in the lower dimensional ranges. That's just part of the setup as well. When you're trying to understand duality, you don't really express unconditional love. And because you've got all of these programs of lack, limitation, and separation running, you think there's a finite amount of resources. And so you will try to control and manipulate. All right. So part of that's just the setup of the game.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
We hope that helps.
Thanks, Stephen. Right quick, let's see. The Syrians, since we brought them up a bit, it's my understanding that a lot of the sort of the darker ritual magic aspects of humanity that we're dealing with now, that's sort of coming to the surface, comes from a Sirius lineage. I know it comes from many others as well, but I know that they had that in their society and they had to sort of clear that. I was wondering if what did they do to clear that, and what lessons can we learn here on Earth from that Syrian evolution?
Yeah, some of it comes from Sirius, Orion, some from the Pleiades in our early history. But yeah, it was kind of rife in the Syrian star system.
Mm-hmm.
So just like you're going through it right now, understanding the ramifications of your actions and understanding that everything that you're pulsing out pulses out through the entire universe. And so beings began to see the manifestation of that darkness and how they felt, and decided as a collective that this really wasn't working. And the way that you are going through it right now, deciding, oh, what's happening on this planet isn't really working, because there's a lot of dark magic that happens on this planet. There are beings who truly understand the process of manifestation that has been passed down generationally. And when you are born into that awareness, it's very easy for you to manifest because it is so ingrained. You're not conditioned in the same way. You're taught in a very different way. And the idea was that the family would maintain its power. And there were rituals and things that were done to try to sustain that frequency. And, there was certainly a lot of dark stuff that happened in Atlantis as well, dark magic. And a lot of that came from the connection that the Atlanteans had with the Anunnaki that were on Mars at the time. All right. Through their ritualistic magic to try to generate power, but generating power at the expense of others. Instead of getting the energy from source, they were trying to gather the energy from other people to control and manipulate because, frankly, they felt they knew better. And there's only so far that the dark can go in the game. There's only so far that the dark will ever go, because in order to access the higher ranges, you've got to be in your heart center. And so the game will always collapse on itself with the dark. The pendulum will always swing because there's only so far. It's an illusion that it can ever go. You can't go higher in frequency.
It
Is
feels
that
like,
answer?
yeah, it feels like we're kind of seeing that right now with our societal, with these disclosures and societal breakdowns and certain aspects that are no longer serving. Well, cool. Thank you.
Because there are lots of people who are just curious, who are starting to ask better internal questions. Not necessarily are they voicing it with their neighbor, but they're asking themselves some questions. What do I want out of life? That was never a question that 2 generations ago your grandparents or great-grandparents ever felt that they could ever ask. Someone growing up in the 1920s or 1940s never thought to ask, what do I want out of life? They felt that they got their lot and that was it. The majority of them. This is what you do. It was all laid out. There were not many who diverged from that path. was very clear, and that still goes on in parts of the world today.
Yeah,
But enough.
I was looking at old pictures from like the 1930s and 40s and 20s, and there weren't many people smiling back then, at least in the old pictures.
It was a different mindset.
Yeah.
All right. And you didn't really ask. You just had your lot and you dealt with it. You didn't necessarily dream in the same way, um, or to the same extent. You stayed generally in the area where you were born because you didn't travel. You didn't have the same kind of interaction that you have, which has been afforded to you with um, the ability to fly and the ability to use the internet and, experience other cultures. Even if you don't travel, you can get a sense of what all that's like, and it gets you thinking in new ways.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Christian, you want to hop in?
Hey guys, yeah, sorry I'm driving. But I just had a question about kind of what we're moving to with the astrology stuff because I was listening to a speaker last week on her YouTube show, and she said that we're not actually moving into Aquarius for another 300 years, and that they've been pushing some agenda saying that we are, so it kind of messes up all of our information we've been getting on astrology. And I was just curious if that's really a thing, if that we're not moving into Aquarius for another 300 years, that we've been in a different sign this entire time and have been told the wrong information. So I just try to get clarity on that.
Well, it's not that there is an absolute hard line that says, "Oh, the switch is going to flip." All right, on this day that everything is going to change on a singular day. But again, we said you're moving through the sector of space, and you can think about an age in that same way, whether it's the age of Pisces or Aquarius or whatever. There's a whole transitional phase that you're kind of moving into. So whether or not it's the exact date, it doesn't really matter. People are thinking in a different way. And you do have the energetic support to lead you into another age. And it really will take, the breadth of that time for you all to get your new kind of programs established and be living in a completely different world. Many people will ask us when money's going to go away. And we say you've got about another 75 years because until you learn to be wholly unconditional, you're still going to have a conditional exchange system, and money's as good as any other. So you're working on it, you're working towards it, and it will move pretty quickly, but you're not going to do away with it altogether. You will definitely change the mindset, and you all will have a greater amount of abundance, and you will have a lot of resources available to you, but it'll still be there in the background. You'll still kind of use it, and then it'll slowly fade out. And this is true with many things. We know some of you are feeling a little disheartened as we talk about this because you felt like you wanted to see something that was miraculously different in this lifetime. And in some ways, you absolutely will. You absolutely will. And there's a lot of change that's on the horizon. Things can shift pretty quickly, especially when you start to think in a more galactic way. When ET starts showing up in a more direct way for the collective, it's one thing to have a personal experience with a ship or lights. It's another when everybody around you is staring at the same thing you are and having the same shared experience. It massively alters the way that you think. It changes the questions that you ask. Why are things the way they are? So that can radically alter. And that's in part why many beings have been standing in the background, because they know that it will radically alter your perception of reality. And you need to be ready because, the hope is that they are here to support you and lead you, not generate more fear for you. If you look at most of the movies around ETs in the last 15 years, it's all shoot 'em up, blow 'em up. They're here to take over. They wanted to do that. It wouldn't really matter what you did. We hate to tell you that.
Yeah, right. I totally understand that. Yeah, right. And technically still in, what is it, Pisces right now? So if she was saying, she walked outside, she started looking at the sky, and she was like, I've met so many people in my field that have never even walked outside and looked at the sky to realize that it's not lining up to what we've been being told. So if we're not, because certain things are supposed to happen, when they read the astrological charts, of course. But she had said that we don't move in for another 300 years, something that we've been hearing about being pushed on us for like the last 25, 30, the age of Aquarius. So I was just very taken back by that. Like, well, that kind of flip-flopped a little bit. But I do understand what you're saying as well. But do you have any clarity on what we're technically in right now still? Or
Well, again, it's not that it happens on a singular date and that's it. It's more of there's kind of an overlapping stage. So, we would say probably another 35 years, you're going to look and see more of an alignment at that point. But 300, no.
okay. Thank you, Wendy.
All right. Thank
Oh,
you
you
for some
guys.
peace. Wendy of the peace.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Travis, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hello, Keith.
Greetings.
So, yeah, I have actually, I have been connecting with 3 races now, and one of them is a female Pleiadian, and she told and and one of the names that and literally when I woke up from a dream, I just thought Pleiadian, and then I just somehow got the name Akasa. And now I can and I usually channel a Yael and a Sasani now, although I mostly did a Yael before. But now I'm end up channeling 3. And I would like to see what your perspective on that would be.
Well, it's important that you trust yourself. So, you'll work with different beings at different periods, and there are different pieces of information that you are wanting to learn. And these beings will come in and out to share. So this new being will probably be here for a short while, go away, and come back probably in another year or so, pop back in. But this is about you learning to trust yourself, trust in your discernment, taking the bits, pieces of information that resonate with you in terms of the conversations that you have. So, if you want to connect with your guides, all of you have access. It's just a matter of aligning with the frequency and turning the volume up. And then trusting in yourself in the moment when you are making that connection. So let's say you have your dream and you wake up. There may be a certainty that you have about it in that moment as you first wake up that oh, that was Pleiadian. And then a couple minutes may pass and you start to question it. Was that really Pleiadian? Was that, what were they saying? So in that initial moment, there's usually a great deal of clarity around it. And that's when you move out of the heart, which is where you access all of that multidimensional information. And you move back into the operating system of the limiting mind, the ego mind. And that's where you start to pull it apart and analyze it. And you can't access multidimensional information from the ego mind. You have to go back into the heart center. So as you start getting these hits and awarenesses that you are connecting with these specific beings, trust that. And then, as we said, use your own discernment. Does the information that they've given me resonate with me? Is it appropriate? Is it in alignment for my perspective of reality and what I want to create and generate? And that doesn't matter whether it's information that's coming from us or from anyone else. It's about you trusting in yourself. And the more you do that, the more you work with that inner reflection and trying to use your own discernment, the clearer that's going to be. The greater your awareness will be of that. Because everybody's got a different opinion. Everybody can offer them. It doesn't mean that they're great opinions. Same thing with human to human level. Some friends have great advice, and then you kind of have to kind of soak it up and say, oh, is this information that I resonate with? Is it advice that I want to follow? Or, oh, yeah, that's not the best advice. I don't think I want to follow through with that. Same thing, human to human, you play out interdimensionally. All right. Every fear you have that you work on human to human, you've got it playing interdimensionally as well. So just have an awareness of that as well. But this is getting you back in your power for you to trust in yourself and say, is the information I'm being given accurate? Is it something that I feel aligned with? All right. We hope that helps.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Travis. All right. Let's see. Mara Moon, hop in here.
Hi, everyone. Hi to the P's. My name's Morgan, and I'm here with my wife, Mara.
Mara.
I have a question that weighs heavy on our hearts. As the consciousness of humanity elevates and the light exposes the darkest shadows in our world, can you offer reassurance that the widespread exploitation and trafficking of children is presently being eradicated? Are the ETs intervening to protect children, and is the crisis less now than it was 5 years ago?
We wouldn't say it's less because it's become more prevalent in terms of there are those who have systems in place and they're better at working the system. There's more awareness of it now than there was 5 years ago. And there have been some things that have most certainly been done, but it's far from being eradicated. And there's still a lot more to go. It is difficult for the collective to really wrap their brains around because it is heart-wrenching when you really see what has been going on. And most people, it's too difficult for them to even process that. So they don't want to see it if it's that dark and that heavy. But they're going to come to a point here where they're going to be faced with it as it starts to come out more and more in the collective reality. You've already seen stories, and you know when you know that Jeffrey Epstein and Epstein Island and Nexus and all of these organizations that have made it mainstream, where you've heard about some of the things going on. That helps the general populace kind of open up just a bit in a slow way so they can see, okay, it goes deeper and deeper. The magnitude and the duration that this has been going on, how many generations this has been going on, is mind-boggling. And this is part of what humans need to heal. It's also a galactic pattern, unfortunately. And so there's all that added galactic energy that gets added to it. The slave trade, the human slave trade that's been going on throughout the galaxy as well. So it's vast. There is more light that is being shown on it, but there's still a ways to go, unfortunately. All right. But, you ask about ETs interfering as part of your growth process. And we know that's a tough pill to swallow, but think about how you raise your children. Sometimes your children have to go through some difficult situations to really learn firsthand. You can't do it for them. It's going to be painful for them to walk through it, but they're going to have to do it to learn and to grow. And it's the same thing as we watch you go through this. And remember, souls choose particular incarnations to learn, to grow, to be of service. Oftentimes the souls, at the soul level, we know at the personality level, you're saying, no, I never want this. But at the soul level, they do it as a point of service to say, this is the potential for my lifetime. I hope it doesn't work out. I hope I can help someone else, the perpetrator, to find more light within themselves. But the soul will often choose that to have a particular kind of experience to set up certain programs so that they can work through certain issues. Maybe they were a perpetrator in another lifetime, say in the Syrian star system. And so this lifetime they choose victim. We're talking about the soul level. And it's very difficult to see and to look at, but humanity is coming to a point where they're going to have to look at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's so much war on your planet. There are always wars going on your planet. There is such a lack of respect for life in many areas of the world. It's nothing to kill someone else, move on down the road. And this has been happening for thousands and thousands of years. So you're really having to look at the value of a life. Children, innocence, it's easier for you to see that and to acknowledge it. But it's happening at every level.
Yeah, and those disclosures and awarenesses come out, I think so many feel just helpless because it has been so prominent on the planet for so long, and people are coming to the realization like, well, what can I do to, we all feel like our hands are tied. What do you suggest we could do to help mitigate this sort of disease that humanity is plagued with?
Well, that's up to each individual at their level, what they feel called to do, whether that's to lend their energy to an organization that is bringing greater awareness, whether it's having this discussion with friends, family members. It's different for everybody at a particular level. But, what does that represent when you feel into that? Most of you will feel a contraction. And you can heal from within as well, working holographically. And as you do that, it helps the collective. So where do you try to suppress another person in your reality? Maybe in a friendship or a relationship, you try to get everybody else onto the same page. And so that they're thinking in your way. You try to manipulate the situation. Well, it's a minor version of the same frequency, that manipulation, that suppression of someone else. Where do you try to suppress somebody else? Where do you try to puff yourself up, make yourself better, feel better by making other people feel small? Where do you do that within yourself? Where do you do that to your inner child? So as you start to heal some of that for yourself, that aids in the collective being able to be in resonance with the healing frequency around that specific frequency, right? So not everybody's going to feel called to go lend their energy to a particular organization. And we would say, be very cautious when you lend your energy to organizations. Are they fighting something or are they building towards something? Pick ones that are building towards something, because if you're fighting something, you're going to stay in a loop of conflict with the thing that you don't like. You'll keep manifesting it. So you need to build towards something of a higher vibrational nature.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, it seems like there are other camps, so to say, that are actually using the human trafficking narrative to benefit themselves, in a sense, sort of going to extremes. I know the whole story is an extreme story anyways, but it feels like there's some other bad actors trying to use the disclosures to the disadvantage of humanity, or take advantage of people. Is that the case as well?
Yes, there will always be those who want to control and manipulate the information. They see it starting to come out. So, okay, how can we spin this so that it goes our way?
Right.
Those at the top. Remember what we said, they're masters at the top of manifestation. They are masters at understanding the human psyche and the manipulation of the human psyche. And so they will spin stories to get the collective to believe a certain narrative. So this is why it's very difficult right now for all of you to figure out what the truth is. And you may never fully know what the quote unquote truth is, but you have to go into yourself and feel what is true for me in this moment. All right. Because a lot of those things you're not going to understand. And again, if you have 100 people watching something unfold right before their eyes, you're going to have 100 different stories. So which story is accurate?
Right.
It's always colored by perspective. So you just have to take what resonates with you. This is why we're so big on discernment. If it resonates with you and it's in alignment with your energy and what you want to move towards, then go for it. If not, just let it go. Try not to hold on to the stories. Try to just stay present. What's true for me now? And as you're growing and developing, you are shifting your belief systems. So hopefully your beliefs are going to shift a bit as you go. And if you hold on to a story or a narrative and don't re-question it, sometimes you're holding on to old energy. So you have to say, what resonates with me now? Yes, it resonated a year ago, Doesn't mean that I have to hold fast to that, and it doesn't resonate with me now. And don't beat yourself up for saying, "Oh, well, I bought into that a year ago." Well, that's all right. That's where you were a year ago. You've grown, you've shifted, you've changed, and let it go. Reassess.
It seems as we're going through this discovery disclosure phase of all of these different aspects of our lives, we are also getting far out there stories. The human trafficking thing being a hard pill to swallow. There's also stories now with weather modification and direct energy weapons being used to create fires and other sorts of distortions. And I'm just wondering, is it going to continue? Is the weather modification storylines, how much truth is that? And then how do we navigate these constant bombardment of storylines that seem so incredible, but yet real?
Weather modification is most certainly real.
Mm-hmm.
And you even have the documentation that goes back 60 years. And it's possible, but some people aren't even aware of that this was out there 60 years ago. So it's most certainly going on. And the manipulation, your green agenda is a social experiment. All right. You all need to pay attention to your pollution and how you're dealing with the environment. But there is then a way of kind of co-opting that need to expand your perspective and deal with the earth. And again, this goes back to how can we take the story and spin it to our advantage? And the green agenda is part of that. The whole global warming aspect of it is not accurate. It's a social experiment. And you need to follow that through to see who's benefiting from that. And it's creating a lot of problems, actually. But that's not to say that you don't have problems with pollution and how you are poisoning your planet, but you need to find better solutions. And this is where the ET piece comes in, because as soon as ETs show up, you say, well, how'd they get here? What are they using for power sources? And then it's game over. You can't control and manipulate in the same way when you've got free energy. So, Earth can be healed relatively quickly. And it's done through your collective thoughts. It's done through the collective focus of energy, because Earth is a living example, a living expression of the collective energy. And so when you start cleaning up your thoughts, you will start cleaning up the Earth. When you have toxic thoughts, guess what? You start creating a toxic planet. So as you start to go through this ascension process, it's kind of a natural byproduct of that. As you start cleaning up yourself, your responsibility for your actions, you start taking that on. You have greater respect for yourself and for those around you. And so that translates down to Mother Earth as well. So it's just kind of a byproduct of that. But when you get all these stories coming out, just try to see what's important for you to take away from it. How does this really impact you? Or is it putting you in a victim stance as you hear the information? And what can you do to shift your perspective to put yourself back in an empowered state? All right.
Awesome.
And this is, it's an interesting time because you have access to so much information, but there's also a lot of control and manipulation of the information. So this helps you with empowerment to learn to empower yourself.
Yeah, it's a difficult. We're learning a lot, like you were saying earlier. Discernment, that seems to be the big lesson of the year or these past few years, with all the different storylines and narratives.
Yeah, and what you'll find, lies are best told when they're relatively close to the truth, when they're sprinkled with the truth. Because if something's a bold-faced lie, you all are going to feel the vibration of it and know, oh, that's a lie for sure. But as you start to go in and check, does this resonate with me? It can be a truth for you. It doesn't mean it's a permanent truth. It may just be that there's an aspect of it that you need to align with or take information from. Maybe in that bigger light, there is a truth that's encoded in that, and that's the piece you're in resonance with, and that's what you're taking away. So it's never as cut and dried as you might like it to be to say, oh, yes, X, Y, and Z transpired.
Right.
It's a little more tricky than that.
Absolutely. That's what we're learning. Well, I want to honor your time. And I also wanted to sort of see if we could squeeze in a little activation before before we say goodbye. Could we spend a little time and get the light language from the piece?
Yes. So we want to do one that's going to help you with clarity, especially what we were just talking about. Gaining clarity for yourself. What is it that you want? What do you need to know? What do you need to do in order to put yourself in alignment with the frequency that you would like to see manifest in your life? And then also clarity in terms of, what resonates with you is truth in terms of what you're getting from the collective story. So we'll do that. And then also empowerment so that you feel a bit more empowered, that you start claiming your energy and not giving it away, choosing how you want to feel in any given moment, not reacting to the energies that are around you by default. All right. So if this is your first time experiencing the language of light, let us just say this. The language of light is Source's language, and it's comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic information. So it's all encoded with that. And you'll notice here as we go that there may be shifts in the energy. It's because many beings are coming in and blending their energy together to present you with information. Now, the language of light is a piece of spiritual technology in that it is a reference point for you to shift your energy field to. So it aids you in finding that specific frequency. So if somebody asks you to sing the note of C, most of you don't have perfect pitch, be very difficult to do. But if somebody plays the note on the piano, you say, oh, that note, no problem. And then you sing it. This is what the language of light helps you to do. Now, the secondary level that we were talking about here, galactic information, some of the beings that are coming through and lending their energy are also sharing the how-to with you. They walk the path that you're on. So if you're wondering how to integrate manipulation, they may have walked through it in their system, and it's encoded in the carrier wave that comes along with the sound that you're experiencing. So it is a piece of spiritual technology. The beautiful thing is that it bypasses the language centers of the brain, and it speaks directly to you, the divine being of light, having this experience. So there's really nothing that you need to do at the ego level. You just relax, take a nice deep breath, and we'll see where we go. Inda ora meneberejo dolo emereji nanane inda de uide bere ira armeneberka de barshkata hizaji da arrebere inda de ra uja atakatai inda arreberka de barshkata dai shite takata hasakato ora athana aishi shikate hisai katora arremeneberkatai inda la meneberka de barshkata Hasakata hinda arrabidibidi. Take a nice deep breath. Isa oto orrabidibidikatabadushkatibidikatai debarajatata arrabidibidishkatibidikata hasakata arrabidibidikatabadushkatibidikata atatatatatoto arrabidibidikatabadushkatibidikata hasakata arraminiminiminishkatibidikata arrabidikata ishitata arrabidibidikata inda ai tatakata hasha atatata. All right. So take a nice deep breath. Now, when you're ready, you can bring your presence back to the room. The information is now encoded in your energetic field. It's recorded there. So if you want, what we recommend typically is that you work with this energy 3 times a day for 3 days in a row. And the reason we say that is just because that gives you a good amount of time to start to become aware of the subtle energy so that you recognize it when you're in it. All right. You can work with it more or less. It's just up to you and how you're feeling. Sometimes it can be very triggering and activating for people. Other times, not so much. And it just depends in part where you're resonating as you're accessing the information. Is it a big shift that you make and you really notice that energy, or are you already there? Are you already up at that high resonance? So it's different for everybody every single time. Now, if you can come back and listen to this recording, you can come back and actually listen to it, or you can imagine connecting to this moment. It's recorded in your energetic field. And really, it makes no difference. The difference is in the human mind that says, oh, the things that I can experience with my senses is real. The other stuff is, well, maybe not really sure. Is it real? But we assure you, it puts you in alignment with the frequency. The moment that you think about it, you are once again here and in alignment. So it's up to you how you want to explore that, but that's typically what we recommend. And then plenty of water to drink as you go, because these energies are kind of moving through the body and shifting some of the cellular resonance. And then the body likes to let go of what is not in resonance with that energy. And the water is just helping to move the frequencies through and to flush things out. So plenty of water to drink. But we'll go ahead and we'll leave you here, dears. Feel free to call on us directly. You don't need Wendy. Just ground, heart center yourself, ask your question and listen. Will help to put the information in your awareness until you want it or you no longer, you get it or you no longer want it. And until then, we are around, we are watching, we are waiting, and we are sending many, many well wishes.
Thank you. All right. Wow. Quite a bit to chew on there. Always is. How do you chew on the information? How do you process it, or does it just become such a normal thing for you? Like, do you get like big like revelations, or like, oh my God, what am I going to do with that information?
We've been doing this for so long. I don't even know how many hours I've channeled in nearly 30 years. There are little tidbits. They might say something in a slightly different way, and that's kind of like, oh, that was an interesting perspective or a way to hear it that they've never talked about it from that vantage point before. But for the most part, it's stuff that we've talked about. Their message hasn't changed a lot in almost 30 years, which is always fascinating to me. But yeah, occasionally there's some new tidbits. And then if it's a really new concept that I need to bring through for the group, they'll start to kind of condition me. They'll start to give me little bits and pieces of it, so that I have a chance to kind of process through my own stuff before I bring it through. Because sometimes if I've never heard it, and it can be very difficult for me to stay focused, because then my mind wants to get active and go, well, what does that mean? How does this work?
Right. Yeah,
And
that's what I was kind of wondering, how that mechanism worked.
Occasionally, but big concepts that they've never broached, they'll usually bring it up beforehand. Yeah, we'll bring it up in some way with me. But occasionally, yeah, there's like, oh, that's brand new. But it's usually not information that is difficult for me to process. It's not going to trigger past life memories or something where I need to have some space to kind of unpack it.
Well, they often bring up the idea of the photonic belt and the and this time I heard, I think it sounded like a new terminology, but the dimensional wall and going beyond that and sort of everything shifting. What do you see in your mind's eye when they're talking about that sort of photonic belt energy and big shifts ahead?
There's always a visual. They give me lots of images. My guides give me things. I get lots of pictures and things. But I always see like space, and there's like this white kind of band or wall, and then we're kind of moving on this track as we're moving through it. So I always get that image when they talk about it. Sometimes they're very specific with their imagery. When they talk about time, that's another one where they have a sphere, and then the now moment that we're standing on is a triangle. And that's like the collective belief system. And then there's another triangle inside that. That's our personal belief system. They're always very specific about the geometry and the imagery with that. So yeah, I always see that kind of white wall there.
Has it always been a triangle, or is it changed
Uh-uh.
from circle
Always.
to? It's always a triangle.
It's always a giant sphere, and then there's a
Oh,
the way that they show it is um, the triangle, and then there's the little sphere at the top, which is the now moment, and that's kind of what goes on the larger sphere. I've drawn
okay.
the image, but I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm describing it very well. But yeah, they're very specific with that imagery. There's something about it, the way that it must trigger us.
Mhm.
That was always very specific.
It is the triangle a connector between the small circle and the big circle?
The little circles so just if you can see
Yeah. Triangle.
the triangle, there's a little one right inside of that.
Okay.
And then the circles at the
Oh,
at the
okay.
top. And then if you can imagine that point being at the very bottom of this giant sphere, and then that
Oh,
symbol
okay, I
would be
see.
all the way around the sphere.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll have to get you the drawing sometime.
I
Some
have Yeah, if I knew exactly where I have it drawn out. It's in if anybody has the Great Human Potential, I think they have I think it's in there. I think the illustration is in there.
Well, before we go, I did want to just, Chris, do you want to pop in for a second? And I want to introduce you to Chris. He's from Serious Joy, and he has a great show over there. Maybe you've seen it. He's in astrology, and he's a big fan. So I just want to just
Thank you, Reuben.
make
Thank
a
you,
quick
Wendy.
little
Nice to meet
introduction
you.
there.
It's nice to meet you. Yes, I'm familiar with your work. My brother is a huge fan.
Oh, really? That just warms
Yes.
my heart. Thank you. I'm actually a huge fan of your work too, and I'm so grateful that you are of such great service to humanity. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. He always sends me stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's good.
Oh, thank you. That lights up my day. And I'm real grateful for your work. And any suggestion in how just to help guide the collective right now in this moment from your witness perspective as a light worker.
I think kind of what we talked about, people standing in their power
Mhm.
and not giving it away in terms of their energy and kind of buying into the narrative and just choosing, how do I want to feel right now? I mean, I could think about, oh my, what's going to happen with the economy, and it's not going well, and I'm going to have to really watch my money. And you can either buy into that, or you can choose to stand in another frequency and create a lot of abundance. So I think the biggest thing right now is empowering people to choose how they want to feel instead of reacting how they're being told they need to feel.
Brilliant. So being the source of the vibration instead of
Yes,
reacting to suggested vibration.
exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And
Thank
before I
you.
let the two of you guys go, because that question about the astrology and this idea of Aquarius, I know, Chris, that's your specialty, and I think, astrology wise, we are still a ways from like the official Aquarian cycle, right? But the way the P's were describing it was more of a gradual, not like an overnight thing. Can you comment on that, Chris, and maybe Wendy too?
The P's description is how I have understood it, in the sense that it is a gradation, just like the sun rising, or, are you, Native America, are you in Nebraska or Kansas? It's a line that we draw with our imagination. But my understanding is that we are, many of us right now are planting the seeds for the age of Aquarius, so to speak. And I agree. It may be up to 300 years before you see someone in the Aussie outback, like who's disconnected, actually vibrating Aquarius. I think the whole culture will take their time, but I believe this is the dawn of the age. So I liken it to, the Pilgrims arriving to Plymouth Rock. If you didn't have the Pilgrims arrive, you wouldn't have a constitutional convention in 1776. So I feel like in this generation, we are the Pilgrims. There's many of us who are actively starting to bring in those energies. And it will take, probably 100 years before it becomes common play, that seems to be the consensus among astrologers.
Yeah. Wendy, anything to follow up on that, or?
I don't think not at all.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for all your work and everything you guys do, and coming on this platform and sharing in this way. Really appreciate it.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Reuben.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Wendy, we'll see you next week in Sedona.
Yes. Looking forward to
And
it.
yeah, and then again in June in Shasta. But we have some members here that are going to be hanging out with us in Sedona as well, so we can always catch up a little bit more. I know there's a lot of people still had the hands up and questions, and we didn't quite get to them all. But maybe we can see what happens next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much, Wendy, for all your work.
Thank
Talk
you,
soon.
everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you like this interview. We actually do this every week on my membership portal page. You can access it through interviewwithed.org or click on the link somewhere in here. I'll put a link and come over and join us. You too can ask questions. Every week we have new special guests, and you get to ask questions directly to the channelers and to the beings that they channel. So see you in the portal.